Hi, welcome to Shelf Starters. I'm Rosie.
And I'm Kate. Hi, everyone.
And today we have a mishmash of poems. A section of the Norton that is basically a whole heap of random poems by different poets around the same time. And I think the purpose is basically to show us like what the trends were in poetry at the time.
To acknowledge that there was really quite a movement to ensure that England had representation in the realm of poetry, and it wasn't just left to Italian
Europe
and Latin and the continent. They wanted to kind of show what they could do. And poetry was to do with class and to do with, well, no, not so much class, that's not true, to do with society, I guess. And it was much a bit like, I'm just trying to think what we can liken it to in our world. And it's, I don't know if you would say music, not really. But it was more performative.
I think it's education in general, because it was a thing that became expected.
All people would be able to write and read and deliver poetry.
Yeah.
And that performative element is definitely stronger. A big part of this time, the 16th century, late 16th, early 17th. It's kind of interesting that the performance aspect of poetry is part of it. Obviously, I suppose that's to do with printing and money.
Yes. Things about printing, that's probably one of the most interesting parts of this section.
Oh, yes, that this guy that printed legal work.
Well, printing was sort of just starting to happen, I suppose.
Yeah.
But this is what we're talking about when we talk about like Miscellany. There are so many different poets in here. And we were just before we started filming that it was just a bit samey.
Yeah, a little bit samey. And which is a sad thing to say, given that they're trying to play with style and they're trying to do things differently. They're trying to draw on what went before, but do things differently. But there is a reliance on, I guess it's the subject matter, and also the sonnets were the things that rose to fame. So then if you think about it, sonnets do tend to be a bit samey, except when they're trying to be hugely witty. And there was a little bit of wit going on in some of them.
So I think the Norton's done quite well in choosing like ones that are at least a little bit different from each other. But I think what like kind of, because I read all of these and they're mostly poems, but some of them also were playwrights. So I also read some plays, which was a welcome break.
Yes, that's the thing. You do get sick of it.
They're all like, when you read just a collection of poems like this, where they're all about love and they're all kind of like sonnets about love or something, it gets a bit tedious. And you also kind of lose the distinction between poets.
They tend to mesh into one another. And there is no way I could do that without going back and referencing the text to remember.
But it just sort of emphasizes more how great some of the more well-known poets were, because they do feel so different.
They've risen up.
So Thomas Wyatt and Henry Howard, I really liked them. That you remember those.
You do. You do. Whereas these sort of smaller works, I guess is how I would describe them, are perhaps less memorable. I mean, apart from the obvious where you have a female writer, and then, of course, you can remember her because she's different. And I think that Gascoigne, because he's really quite funny and hugely sexually overt, like really, really, yes. Well, actually, I think you have to preface the whole thing with talking about what Norton gives us, which is a brief introduction to Richard Tottel, who was the publisher. So I think we should start with him. So, tell me about that book, Rose.
So we actually kind of touched on it back, I think, when we did either Thomas Wyatt or Henry Howard, because this is where they were like published first. So this guy is the first guy to compile English sonnets and other poems into a
body of work.
Of different poets altogether. And it mostly has Henry Howard and Thomas Wyatt, but then it also has another section of mostly anonymous, so you don't even know who wrote them. Kind of fun. And so he was like involved in the printing press, I think, so he had like exclusive rights.
And he was mainly publishing legal books.
He had the connection to the legal world.
And that's where he made his money. And so he did this not for the money so much, I think, as for this idea of giving England a name in a different area. So I think that's really important first. And he was friends. Richard Tottel was friend? He did a lot of. Did he do Thomas More? He did. He published Thomas More and Surrey's translation of Aeneid,
Yeah, that's in here.
Yeah.
So in this miscellany, then it became really common to have miscellanies at this time. So you would have.
So he started the trend. He started a trend and gave us what we've got here, which is great.
And I thought this was cool because you can actually like buy the original compilation.
Does that have, and are there pictures in there, Rosie, or not?
No,
engravings
it's just like
things. It just looks from the cover like, oh, there's going to be engravings and such.
No. This is a picture of books being burnt on the front.
Oh, okay. All right.
It's the burning of the remains of Martin Bucer and Paul Fagius on Market Hill in Cambridge in 1557. It is a woodcut illustration from Aximonians. I'm going to say the style was really similar to Fox's Book of Martyrs, which is Aximonians. You were thinking, I think, maybe that there might be pictures in there because it's the same style.
Yeah. Anyway, I found that really fascinating to read that little intro to this collection. It was really good. In fact, I probably found that slightly more interesting than the poems themselves, maybe. But anyway, we kick off with the one and only female representative, and
Locke. And can't find any works by her anywhere. So
other than this, sounds to me like we know more about her because of her stance as very religious, but very involved in the Protestant Reformation in the reign of Mary I. So that's dangerous territory. And the poem we have in here, the sonnet we have, is the first English sonnet in a sequence that's a precursor to Donne, because it's that same idea of religion, talking to God. I mean, it's the usual, God's kind of stern, and she's praying for mercy.
Yeah, and I liked the lines in the middle, line 7 and 8. I feel my sin that hath oppressed my soul with sorrow and surmounting smart. It just sounds kind of
like it hurts, like she's in pain. And whatever way I gaze about for grace, my filth and fault are ever in my face. She can't let that go to hurt the sins. I mean, I know I can't bear that stance, but anyway, that's the one she takes. And it's, I mean, obviously it's, incredibly neat in its 14 lines and its rhyming scheme, and nothing tricky about it. So it's very easy to remember. Very, very, very easy to remember. So that was a good intro, I thought. And then we moved to Gascoigne. Yes. And I like this, Rosie.
Yes, this I did like. This is him.
Because it was fun.
This one has actually different ones. So a few different poems, but then it also had The Steel Glass, which I think is a longer poem from memory.
I have not read that. I've just got what's in here.
And the Philomena, which we've heard before in other retelling. So that was kind of cool. But these ones in the Norton are very funny.
Very funny. And he's a bit of a rogue. I mean, he was a bit of a rogue. I mean, he was a failed lawyer, a failed soldier. He was a bad boy. He reminded me a bit of, the Moors and the bad boy, the Bronte's brother.
Branwell.
Yes. Reminds me of that sort of bad boy, only he's a lot more useful in that he could actually write.
So he's becomes poor and then unable to sustain any profession, basically.
And he's just obsessed with sex, I think. He likes obscenities, but at least he does it lightly, like it's light and fun. Like, I mean, I like this first one. And if I did, what then? I think that's hilarious. So even if I did that, so what?
Right. So it's like a woman cheated on her husband and she's like, what's she going to do about it?
No, but I actually was a bit confused by what I read about it. And I think it's a woman cheating on her lover. So she's married. She's already married, and she's cheated on her husband with a lover, and now she's cheated on her lover with another lover, and she's explaining that move to the first lover. So she's very naughty, and I love it. I love that whole tone. It's hilarious. And if I did, what then? Who cares? What are you going to do about it? It's hilarious.
And it's the whole idiom of like, there's more fish in the sea.
I like that too. There's more fish in the sea, definitely. Each fisherman can wish that all the sea at every tide were his alone to fish. So obviously, it's not all for just one person either. So there's many more fish in the sea, but it's not just designed for you, because there's other fishermen also, is what she's saying. So I'm not just for you. I'm out there, and it's my right. It's my absolute right. And so it's a really raunchy little number, and it's not a sonnet.
No, and I prefer the ones that aren't sonnets mostly.
Same, they're more fun. Yep. This one was certainly fun, and because you had this dialogue, this banter between the two characters, and the characters were clear as day in the piece. I thought, I loved that. I thought that was fun. I liked that.
You could actually really, hear them.
Yeah, you could hear them, and it was good fun. Very easy language. I mean, actually, obviously, very, very colloquial. Yeah, they talk about beating their brains about, and it's very It's not high. It's not high language at all.
But I think that's what we like the most, because they're the most unique. Because most of the time with poems, you're getting like a guy in the court, a courtier who's pursuing another noble woman, and it's all very flowery, and you get the same kind of imagery again and again.
Unrequited love, and she's on a pedestal, and you've got to use the flowery language because that's part of the courting process. And it's really nice for us to escape from that. And this is certainly that.
There's a few in here that are about like regular people, and that was quite unusual.
Nice. Yeah, I enjoyed that too. And I like the conceit of the next one, the lullaby. The second one, the lullaby of a lover, I thought this was pretty fun as well. Like using the conceit of mothers use lullabies to, quell their baby, the baby crying, and to send them to sleep and to calm them down. And this person, Gascoigne, is lullabying his youth, basically. He's like singing his youth off peacefully.
But specifically his penis.
And specifically. Well, he moves through he starts with sexual desire in his youthful years, and then he goes to his eyes, and then his will, and then he moves by the fifth stanza. That's when he comes to his penis and the same old, his loving boy, my little Robin. That's what he calls it. That's a bit, but it is good attitude. I mean, it's like being, okay, I'm losing it. I'm getting older. It's all kind of fading away. No point getting all upset about it. I've just got to lullaby myself, lullaby it away, like calmly kind of rest up. It's okay. Thus lullaby my youth, mine eyes, my will, my aware, and all that was. I can no more delays devise, but welcome pain, let pleasure pass. With lullaby now, take your leave. With lullaby, your dreams deceive. And when you rise with waking eye, remember then this lullaby. Really rude ending, but pretty funny.
Yes.
And then, but the one that I didn't kind of get into was the last one, which is the longer one.
Like how many things he's tried and failed. It's called Woodmanship. Takes the imagery of archery,
which automatically, even though we practiced archery recently on our holiday in the north of England, even though I now understand archery a little bit, it lost me.
Go through all of the attempts, so like shots in different career paths. I mean, it goes on and on. So but it's basically like he has failed everything.
Yeah,
he's just not good.
As the Nortons tell us, straight up. Yep, that's right.
So philosophy, law, courtier. Then I think I tried to circle them all at one point. Soldier. He's just tried everything, and then it's
and nothing's stuck. So, I'm just imagining the kind of man he was. Totally, obviously great talker. I would imagine highly sociable, fun, and just no good at doing anything like hard work. But anyway, most interesting read. But and then we kind of segue from him to Greville.
Greville, who I have here. This is the selected poems. This one was alright.
Cambridge educated,
or a typical poet from the time, right?
Cambridge educated, wealthy, served in Parliament, but and then there's a bit of a cloud over him, like a bit of bits we don't know. Never married. Deep expression of love for his friend Sir Philip Sidney.
Is he gay? Don't know.
It feels like he's got to be, but nobody says.
He might have been gay.
And then he was stabbed by his servant.
Oh yeah, that was cool. And then you know why?
And then the servant killed himself after he stabbed him.
He was stabbed by the servant because he included the servant in his will.
Oh, I was thinking they must have had a love affair.
Yeah, that's the other possibility that no one's saying.
Yeah, well, maybe they did. Maybe they were lovers, and then he wasn't included in the will because he didn't want to kind of make it obvious they were lovers, and then that angered the whole thing. Anyway, who knows? It's a bit of a whodunit, but makes it nice and interesting. Anyway, he did write this poetry to a woman called
Caelica. It's a fake
Caelica.
Woman.
Yeah, so she's not an actual woman, but he's written this poem to her as though she's a woman, but maybe she's not. Maybe it's to Sydney. Who knows?
Well, she's not. There was no. I think there was no woman that had that name at that.
No, so it's an invented name.
Stand in for an actual woman, but they just use this code name.
Yeah.
Or kind of a method to get your poetry out there is just having inventing a character.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, exactly. And what's really interesting is that he talks in the first one we got. It actually talks about the whole cycle of the world changing, like the end of an era and the beginning of a new one, which is the thing we did with Yeats. The the gyre or the gyre, however you like to say it, where in history that's the kind of pattern. It winds down and then it winds back, spirals back up again. And it's this giant kind of, but there's this moment where you're in between the two movements, like the old and the new. And so he kind of opens with that metaphor, which is really interesting. So he talks, he's talking about, the caves do roar, the very seas do burn, glory grows dark, the sun becomes a night and makes this great world feel a greater might. So I guess the universe, this force that's kind of underpinning this relationship. Really cool. Yeah. I love that. I thought that was really, really good. And all the yoking together of opposites all the way through, that constant. I thought that was really good because that is, the classic, that's what love is, this constant butting up of oppositions, the love and the hate, that kind of underpin passion of any kind.
And then he sort of gets more into things about death and darkness.
Yes, it gets a bit maudlin as he goes on.
You seek what life is at death.
Then make time while you be, but steps to your eternity. So like life's short, it's running out. Yeah. It will run out. So you need to make the most of your moments.
And then this 100, I think, is really interesting because it's all about like fear, the dark. And very romantic to me.
Thick, depriving darknesses. Yeah, images of self-confusednesses which hurt imaginations only see.
A lot of very confused identity issues going on.
Yeah.
He did.
I think we've done a marvellous psychoanalysis on this guy. Yeah. But it is. It's really there is this real sense of confusion in terms of his identity and turmoil, absolute turmoil. It's very clear, and it does stand out from the rest because of that.
All right. Yep.
All right. But then we get to Thomas Lodge and the source of As You Like It. That's cool. I
read a lot. He did write a lot of plays, and I actually quite liked the plays.
Yeah. And did you think of it as being? Did you know that was the kind of inspiration for As You Like It?
Well, you can definitely tell in the play. I mean, firstly for the name.
Yeah, Rosalind. Yes.
And you can tell this one's not a play. This one's it's not the novel, but it's like a narrative kind of, and it has little bits of.
So Rosie, have you got a whole collection there of narratives?
That's Rosalind. Yeah. Then I have The Wounds of Civil War, which is a play.
Wow.
I have A Fig for Momus, which is just collections of poetry. I have A Looking Glass in England. That was quite a good play.
Wow.
And then is Sonnet Cycle, Phyllis. Oh, and also some other sonnet cycle, some other sonnets. Many sonnets.
Wow, Rosie. I'm liking those editions that you've got there are really cool.
Oh, they're awful editions, but they're I wanted to at least make them matching. They're Amazon prints, so they're just literally photocopied works.
Cool.
So they're really cool made. They've got really tiny print and stuff, but at least
they're there. Yes. And what did you think of Pluck the Fruit and Taste the Pleasure? That one.
Oh, funny. Yeah. Also sexual.
Just go with it now, because when you're dead you don't get to do it. It's hilarious. There's no joy other than that, is pretty much what he's saying. And then a tiny little bit from Phyllis, a sonnet.
Yeah, from Phyllis. And these are the sonnet cycles where you get a whole there are many, many sonnets, but all about kind of the one
relationship. Yes.
These are, I've got a couple of them in this edition as well, where the cycles printed in their own editions. Crescent Moon Publishing, if you're interested. What was this? Was this the one that that has a lot of opposites as well? Yes.
I mean, that's actually one of the characteristics of pretty much the collected works, right? That are in here. Just that some of the oxymorons work more, are more effective than others, I guess. Some I went, oh yay, I love this, and some I just went, oh.
Yeah, I don't think this particular poem does much for me.
No, but me neither. Very, very easy to forget, I thought, was my take on that.
I think I didn't like his poetry as much as I actually liked his other stuff for Thomas Lodge, so I think it's a little bit sad that what we've got in the Norton is just these two poems when he wrote so much.
He wrote an awful lot.
The fact that he's influenced Shakespeare, I thought that's more.
That makes him, you would have thought, fairly huge. Yes.
I didn't include any part of that. So I would have thought that would be the bit that people would be more kind of interested to read as this one.
That seems unusual, I've got to say.
But anyway, I think this play was interesting. The Looking Glass for London, England is basically showing people the moral depravity of the world that they're in.
The world they were in. Yep.
You know, you.
A looking glass. Yes, exactly.
So next
Done.
one.
Henry Constable, the Catholic rebel.
And again, another sonnet cycle. This one's about Diana. Diana, obviously, the name
Huntress.
comes from so it's going to be a lot about unfulfilled, unattainable desire. And
Yeah.
again, I mean, what does this say? Hell, heaven, life, death, heat, cold.
Yeah. Well,
Dark.
the same basic principles, yes, as we've seen before. No, I found myself more interested in his own life than I was in the work, because I just thought that what a fascinating concept, that you're born to a wealthy Protestant family and you convert to yes. Yeah. And you try to convert the king.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Bit risky.
Yeah, a little risky, but I thought that was, I wanted to know much more about that than I did about the poetry, which is a bit sad. But anyway.
The identity of Diana is unknown, and Philip Sidney wrote some ones in this collection.
Then there was a guy called Samuel Daniel. He worked for Queen Anne and wrote a whole sequence of sonnets called Delia. And you've got Delia there. Fabulous.
What did I have here? I put something about age.
He's talking about his fidelity increasing with age.
You know, love needs to be more about beauty because beauty's going to fade, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Not a notion that we haven't read about before.
No, it's not new.
No, it's not a new concept, but it's still nice and refreshing, really, to have a focus on that in the scheme of a bunch of sonnets.
Then we have one where the woman is looking in the mirror and then she sees her beauty's gone.
You've got to empathise with that. Any beautiful woman looking, being confronted with the loss of something that was fairly major in terms of who she was. That's hard, I guess. And the next guy does the same thing, doesn't he? Michael Drayton. Doesn't he also deal with aging? I think so. Yeah,
there is aging, the fear of aging before, like, without seeing her age. So, like, the fear of dying before he gets to see her get old, like wanting to see her get old. That's kind of nice. Which
is pretty nice, exactly. Because I don't think many people hand on heart could say that that's something that
they really want to see,
aspires to. Yeah, no.
And there's one about, again, immortalizing his beloved in poetry. That's been done quite a few times as well. The one as a surgeon, that was a bit of a weird tonal shift.
Yes. Well, I think that is linked to the context, Rosie, because there was this fascination in, development of technology and science, and the understanding of the human body and medicine was all wrapped up in all of that. It was this time of, great learning and exploration, and medicine was really part of that. So it's kind of drawing on their own context, which you see John Donne do that, where he does a lot on the whole exploration, seafaring and all those things. So I think it's to do with that.
So he was always like revising and reissuing his poem. So I actually was published under a different name first, and then this is the revised sonnet cycle. And then he has one also about saying goodbye at the end of a relationship.
Yeah,
that's quite a nice one. It's also a little bit different.
Yeah, it is interesting. You get no more of me, and I'm glad I can. I'm that thus so cleanly I myself can free. Shake hands forever, cancel all our vows, and when we meet again, and when we meet at any time again, be it not seen in either of our brows that we one jot of former love retain.
Yeah, like,
so
let's let it go.
We need to sever all ties, walk away, and don't try and bring it back.
Different take, don't you think?
Yeah, and harsh, because I don't think you can do that. I mean, maybe you can, but to me, that's not the point of any experience, is not that you try and separate yourself from it and make it go away and erase it from your memory. It's all part of who you are. I think it's a bit strange. And then we get to John Davies of Hereford. No, I will admit freely that no, I just could not.
And
I could not engage.
Where else? So I don't think he's even that well known elsewhere, because I really print edition for his stuff. Romance with sweet food kind of stuff.
And that also did me in straight away. Like, that just lost me right there. Lost me with that. Not a fave, just not a fave. And then so let's shift on. We moved to Thomas Campion.
And Thomas was a musical guy more than anything
else.
So
that's what I like mostly. Yeah, I like that.
Court Masks, which I think was like kind of like a play, but mostly with music and dancing and things like that.
Yes,
no work.
It is exactly that. Exactly that.
This is the coolest copy. So it's actually the Norton Library. I'm not sure. It seems slightly like, I thought it was like the same as the Norton Anthology, but I'm not sure if it's actually the same company or not. The full works, and it has the music.
Oh, wow.
So you can actually play.
Oh,
wow. If you want, it's got the actual like.
But, and music. Is it music? What's it? written? What instrument would it have been written for? Like one of those,
lute.
A lute, was it?
And like singing, lute and singing.
Wow. That's amazing. It'd be really good if you were even remotely musical. That made Thomas Campion definitely stand out.
Yeah, because it's just a different, like it's poetry for a different purpose. Yeah, and he also did a lot of Latin translations as well. He actually mostly wrote his poems in Latin.
In Latin, yeah. And he did a bit of mocking, didn't he? On kind of, he took tropes and kind of mocked them. Yeah. I mean, the last one, I think it's the last one. There is a garden in her face. There is a garden in her face where roses and white lilies grow. A heavenly paradise is that place wherein all pleasant fruits do flow. There cherries grow, which none may buy, till cherry ripe themselves do cry. So it's kind of hilarious because he's referencing the street sellers, you know, what they would do in the market. Kind of fun. Always fun when somebody's mocking.
Average life. So, yeah, you get the street seller kind of coming, like interjecting into the poem. And then you get the one, I care not for these ladies, where he's saying he prefers lower class women, essentially.
Yes.
And there's supposed to be sexual puns in there.
Lots of them. Yeah, lots and lots of them. I don't think it would not be a politically correct thing to write now.
Yeah, it doesn't really land well today. But
no,
yeah,
not at all. Not at all.
When we come where comfort is, she never will say no. And then there's the poem about Jack and Joan.
I know, which they think no ill.
Average people and how great their life is compared to like courtiers.
Yeah, they think no ill because the inference being because they can't think anything much. No deep thoughts. They're nothing bad. And so life is good. They're happy. They can just skip around on the green.
Got cows that she has named.
A simple life. He's all for it, in theory. So look, we did get an eclectic little mix, and that was good. Some were better than others in terms of the language, I suppose. And the ones that stood out were the ones where they did take some risks.
You can read the selection that the Norton gives you and you get a taste. It becomes quite tedious.
Yeah.
To be honest. It's so repetitive. Like not every poem that is going to be good, No.
It's much easier to anchor in one work, isn't it? Look, I'm glad we were able to, we were given that because we wouldn't have probably ever have heard of half of them.
Oh, I would not have heard of any of them. I definitely had never heard of any of them before.
No, Gascoigne I've heard of, I've got to say. Not Anne Locke, definitely not. And, pretty much nobody else, just Gascoigne. Oh, Constable, yes. Although, no, I don't know that I have heard of Henry Constable. I'm just probably mixing that name up with the painter. It's probably not really the poet at all that I think I know. So really, Gascoigne's the only dude. At least we've expanded our horizons, Rosie, and that's a good thing.
Look, I do like Thomas Lodge. I like him as a player, not as a poet necessarily.
Yeah. And then we can move into Sir Walter Raleigh next week,
which I think will be more interesting. Yeah, more like we know more about the love story with Elizabeth and
there's a much deeper historical interest, I think. All right, so we've got stuff to look forward to, Rosie. I'm glad we're back doing this, and I'm particularly glad we're back having spent the time we spent in Italy. So we've got that kind of Italian background, and also in Edinburgh and York, and then going to Cambridge. That was, it's been really lovely to have done that and then come back to our literature.
We're getting really, really close to the stuff we've been looking forward to this whole time as well.
Yes,
we're like weeks away from Marlowe and Shakespeare, which is just going to be...
I mean, Marlowe in particular, I am really keen to get into that.
All right. I ask, has anyone ever heard of any of these poets before? But I feel like the answer will be no for a lot of people. And also, I would just like to hear in general, what do you think about poetry? Because I find it quite hard to jump. It's not something I draw myself towards. So this was like a challenge to, actually have to get into all of these.
I think perhaps most people think that way consciously. But then I think when you start reading poetry, when you actually read poetry, there is such a pleasure to be had in it. It's a little bit like short stories as well, where you think, I really want a novel. I'm not, short stories are not as immersive an experience as a novel. And then you read really good short stories and you go, yes, they are. I really do love this form. And I think that's pretty much how I feel about poetry. I always think that I don't necessarily love poetry, but I actually secretly definitely do.
You don't normally think to pick up. So in a way, it was good for me to actually have a reason to kind of look for poetry. I did enjoy challenging myself with that. But I wouldn't say of all the poetry that I read for this challenge, I wouldn't call these ones the highlight. I have had a really great time with some of the poetry that we've done.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. These are not the best. Well, obviously not. I mean, they're not
Yeah.
the renowned piece. No, they're not the renowned works. And there's a reason for that.
It's a real decline from Spencer. Like,
yeah. I think, or Spencer most obviously extraordinarily hard to beat.
Yeah.
Right. We were blown away with Spencer, and I think there's no coming back from that, really.
Really shows why he was so great in this time, because, you know, this is what was happening. A lot of this.
Yeah.
Spencer, like, wow. Anyway,
all right.
if you do pick up poetry, I would love to hear, like, if you are the sort of person who reads poetry frequently, what kind of poetry do you read, so that I can have more tips to maybe getting into, like, maybe more modern poetry or something like that?
Yeah, actually, really contemporary poetry would be really interesting to hear what people recommend.
Please leave them below, because I would be very interested.
All right.
Cool.
Until next week.
Yep. See you again next week with Sir Walter Raleigh.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.